So let's talk a little bit about some tricks that you can do as a buyer to get a home that you really want to get. So whenever I'm working with buyers, I always tell them, trust your gut. If you got to talk yourself into a home, it's not the right. But let's say this home you walk into and you feel it right away. It's in your gut. You can see yourself living there. So how do you go about creating a really compelling offer? Well, there's a couple things that we do. And these are some of the tricks that I do to help my buyers in this competitive market get a home under contract. One, you go in a little bit higher than what they're asking for, and then to protect yourself, you can put an escalation clause. And you can put an escalation clause for whatever you feel comfortable in and whatever your pre-approval in. So let's say the house is listed at, I don't know, let's say 460, and you go in at 475 with an escalation clause up to 500,000 at $2,000 increments. So what does that mean? That means if somebody comes in at 480, your escalation clause will kick in up to 482. And so forth and so on. Up to 500,000 will be the max amount. The other thing that we can do, let's say you really want to do inspections. Let's say the place has a septic system. You definitely want to do inspections because septic systems can cost 25, 30 grand if they're bad. And if they're older and they haven't been maintained properly, or there's been a lot of people in the house and there's been a lot of usage, you definitely want to do inspections. But let's say it's hard getting inspections on an offer with somebody else that might be waiving inspections. So what you can do what's called a deductible. So think of it as insurance terms, right? The first $500 you pay for. Well, you could do a deductible and let's say it's $2,500. You're basically saying to the seller, look, I'm not going to nickel and dime you here. Anything north of $2,500, we're going to take on the responsibility, right? So there's a little bit of poker there. You're gambling on the fact that there's nothing major wrong with the house. Now, that still doesn't exclude you from your rights to walk away from the house under the inspection clause, but it helps the seller say, okay, they're serious about buying the house. The other thing you can do, let's say use the example that we were at with the 485, and let's say the escalation clause goes all the way up to 500,000, but you're concerned that there could be an appraisal issue. Right? So to avoid a potential appraisal issue and going higher, you could do something where you can say, hey, look, we'll pay for your 1% transfer tax because in our geographic area, it's 2%, but it's split 1 and 1. So inside the agreement of sale, you can say, look, we'll pay for that 1% transfer tax. On 500,000, you're talking $5,000. Now, somebody might say, okay, well, that's going to add to my closing costs. It will. But if you lose the house over $5,000, you're going to be upset. That's the question I always ask my buyers. And if the answer to that question is yes, then you don't play around and you offer to pay the transfer tax. The other thing too is that's $5,000 of hard cash to the seller that they might not get if there's an appraisal issue above 500,000 on this particular scenario that we're talking about. So there's a couple other tricks and trades that we can do, but these are some of the big ones that we do to turn around and help somebody get into a house that they really love. So I hope this was helpful. I'm Anthony Keane with the Anthony Keane Group with Real Brokerage, and happy to help. Follow along for more tips. Take care now.